Great. Looks like we have some folks from the Bay Area, LA, Inland Empire. Okay. Now we are curious to hear, how did you learn about this webinar? Are you subscribed to our monthly e-news? Did you catch it on LinkedIn? Let us know. It will help us understand how we're reaching folks as we put these webinars on. Thanks. Great. And if you're not signed up yet for California Humanities e-news, it's a monthly newsletter that goes out the first week of the month. And you can sign up for it at a link that we'll put in the chat a little bit later. It's a great way to learn about funding opportunities, programs, events in your area. Okay. Now we'd like to know, have you received a California Humanities grant before? Are you a grantee perhaps, or maybe this is your first time exploring our grant opportunities? Let us know. I'm seeing a lot of first-time applicants. That's always a good sign. Some former grantees, and a few folks who've applied but not received a grant yet. Great. Well, we have a good turnout with people who've applied before, reapplying again after strengthening an application. So we always really encourage those of you who've applied before to try again. And we'll share some tips in this webinar that will help you prepare a competitive application. Okay, just another question. Which programs are of interest to you? I know there might be some librarians in the room, perhaps some documentary filmmakers, maybe others from the public humanities sphere. Let us know. And if you haven't heard of these programs yet, we will break them down in depth shortly. Okay, great. Even distribution. Great. Okay. I think we can get started now. So good morning, everyone. My name is Kirsten Vega. I'm an Associate Program Officer with California Humanities, and I'd like to welcome you to our Grantseeker workshop for winter 2024. You can see on the line I'm joined by colleagues and program officers from all of the programs we'll be touching on today. We're really excited to engage with you. We'll have some Q&A breaks today. If you have a question for us, don't be shy to put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the control panel. We'll have several breaks throughout the session. If we're not getting to your question, we're probably going to get to it in an upcoming session. And anything we don't answer, we can follow up over email. We are recording today. If you can't stay, if you'd like to pass on the session to a colleague, no problem. I will email you a link in the next few days. Now I'd like to introduce my colleagues. We're here with John Lightfoot, Director of Media and Journalism Programs. Felicia Kelly, the Director of Library Innovation Lab and Humanities for All Project Grants, Project and Evaluation Director. Brett Connor, our wonderful grants manager, is on the line. Beth Segura, operations manager. If you have any tech problems today, just chat to Beth. She can help you out. And Luciana Lauvalle, program officer for literature and medicine and humanities for all quick grants. Today, we're just going to give you a primer on California Humanities, who we are, what we do, and then we'll break down in sections all of the grant programs currently on offer, let you know how you can make the most of your eligibility and craft a really competitive application for these programs. Okay, so since so many of you on the line today are new, we'll just introduce ourselves. California Humanities is an independent nonprofit organization, and we are the partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. We work statewide in every county and zip code of California. We give grants, we run programs, we have film screenings, Q&A discussions, many programs over the years in our almost, I think just slightly over 50-year history. Since the 1970s, we've been operating arm in arm with the other state humanities councils in the US. Our mission is really to connect Californians to ideas and to one another through live programs, grants, and support for the public humanities. And now I'll pass it over to Lysena, who will tell you about the public humanities, how we define that.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. And so there's a couple of things that I'll just piggyback off of what Kirsten said. And as she mentioned, our organization's mission has really been to support access to learning, access to the exchange of ideas, access to reflection on our human condition, on our cultural experiences, and most importantly, how that all happens and unfolds here in California. So a big question that comes up when folks learn about our organization or they learn about the work that our grantees are doing is that question of, well, what are the public humanities? Maybe you've heard of the term the humanities when you were in school, but the public humanities has its own sort of particular meaning that is reflected in all of the type of programming that we are either participating in or supporting through our grantees. So essentially, the public humanities are public learning experiences that bring the humanities or amplify the humanities or also bring to light the humanities practices that are part of our everyday life, part of our community life, and also part of our cultural life. So this can mean that these are experiences that are happening outside of educational institutions. Maybe they're happening at your community center. Maybe they're happening at a culturally specific institution. Maybe they're happening in your neighborhood amongst folks who are getting together and having a book group or something, that is part of how we make meaning in the world that we are shaping and we are existing in. And so what you'll see today in our grant programs is really an array of different ways that the work that your organization or your community group or your project is doing and how you can access funding to support that. So I think some of the other things that I'll say is that the public humanities look different everywhere. It could be a large group with many, many people gathered together, maybe in a community center, museum, or library, or it can happen in workshops in smaller, more intimate spaces. It can happen through live in-person learning with a facilitator that is kind of getting everyone talking and thinking and really reflecting, or it can happen in a screening and discussion event. So as I said, there's not one cookie cutter approach, but I'll just say that these, when we want to boil down the public humanities to really simple words, these are people-centered, community-centered, humanities learning experiences that, we all do in different aspects of our life, but our organization, our mission is to really support it and keep it thriving. So I think I'll pass the baton to Kirsten.
Thank you, Lysena. Okay, now I'll give you a snapshot of some current programs at California Humanities. So our grant making program is definitely a major part of our work throughout the state. However, we do have some programs beyond grants. Lysena runs a program called Literature in Medicine, which works with doctors and hospital staff members to read books about the patient experience, graphic novels, traditional fiction pieces, memoir, that help build empathy in medical staff as they work with patients. Really beautiful program. We also, in the last few years, have added an Emerging Journalist Fellowship. This is a fellowship that gives stipends and media training to community college students who are hoping to pursue a career in journalism. And lastly, we have Tools of the Trade, a bank of videos that can show public humanities practitioners how to do things like reach a broader audience, program for accessibility, and work with humanities advisors. So check that out on our YouTube channel. Today, we'll mostly be focusing on our 4 current grant opportunities, all of which have upcoming deadlines this year that you can apply for. If you are working on a documentary film or audio project, if you have an exciting event in the public humanities realm, or perhaps you're a public librarian, or if you're a middle school educator looking to work on civics programs, we'll have some opportunities for you coming up in 2024. Now I'd like to invite Brett Connor to explain some of the terms we use in our applications.
Yeah, you'll hear us talking using some of these words in our in this presentation today, as well as if you do apply with us, we'll refer to these things in our application guidelines and our application form. So we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So first of all, we'll be asking for information about the project director. We view the project director as the main person, our primary contact, the person who is ultimately responsible for executing the proposed project. Next is authorizing official. That's someone at your organization or someone at your fiscal sponsor who has ultimate responsibility as the grantee. So this may be your CEO, your CFO, your grants manager, a development associate, someone at the organization who can sign the bottom line, especially when it comes down to financials. A humanities advisor is an expert in the humanities field, and many of our grant programs, not all, but many require you to have one or two humanities advisors to help shape and inform your program. Now, if you are an individual humanities practitioner, an individual artist, an individual culture bearer, you need to be able to apply through an organization, which is what we call your fiscal sponsor. So we at California Humanities can only grant out to organizations, not people. So if you are a nonprofit that does not have 501c3 status, or if you are an individual that's going to want to complete this project, you will need a fiscal sponsor to represent you. If that situation does apply to you, then you are the subrecipient. So the grantee would be the organization, and then you would be the subrecipient. Most of our grant programs, again, not all, but most require some sort of matching funds, whether it's $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, whatever it may be. So when we ask for matching funds, they're usually at a 1-to-1 ratio or 100% matching funds, which means that if you are asking us for a $20,000 grant, you also need to be able to provide that same amount, $20,000 of income from other sources, whether it be cash donations, whether it be in-kind goods and services. So we need, when you oftentimes when you submit budget information to us, you'll need to demonstrate where are those other places that you will be receiving income in which to complete this project. All right, so now let's get into some nitty-gritty here. So like I said, we accept applications from nonprofit organizations, but we could also accept municipal organizations such as local, state government, like public universities, libraries, museums, tribal governments that meet these criteria. All right, so again, you have tax exempt 501c3 status already, or you're using a fiscal sponsor that does have that status. For all of our grant programs except the California Documentary Project, the applicant organization and or fiscal sponsor must be located in the state of California. Applicants should not have an active grant or a pending application with California Humanities at the same time. So you basically, for most individuals, for most organizations by and far, you can only apply to one thing at a time. So you may, if you already have something, an application pending with us, you need to wait until that decision is made until you apply with us again. Applicant organizations and project directors must be in good standing with us. What that just means is that if you have had a previous grant with us, that grant was closed successfully, nothing was mishandled, there's no reason that you as the project director or your organizations would be ineligible from getting funding from us again. And one note about the Humanities for All program is that there is a 12-month waiting period if you have already been a grantee in the Humanities for All realm. We ask that you wait 1 year after submitting your final report for that grant program until you apply again. All right, so this is just a snapshot of our funding opportunities page on our website. This is going to give you this nice little grants at a glance. It gives you a very high level overview of these main programs that we're going to be talking about today, which Kirsten mentioned: documentary project, Humanities for All, Library Innovation Lab, and as well Civics and Humanities middle grades. So this is a good reference for you to take a peek at and look at all of these at a high level if you're trying to figure out what kind of grant might apply to a project that you're thinking about. All right, just a reminder to submit questions in the Q&A box as we go along. We'll take several of these question breaks along the way. We've got nothing in there right now, so I think we'll just move on to the next section.
I think that's my turn. Yeah, and so I'll talk a little bit about Humanities for All. We're going to start jumping into our extended descriptions of our different grant programs, and we'll begin with a grant program that was started in 2017. And as we'll explain further, this is a grant program that was created to support a broad range of public-facing projects, and of course, that projects that engage people from across all communities, all ages, all backgrounds in California. The focus of the Humanities for All grants is to support projects. And so what this means is that the application process that we'll walk through in just a moment will really ask about the focus of your project, the communities you intend to serve, and again, a clear description of the ways in which your program, your project will bring, amplify, support, and explore how the humanities are happening in your community. I think one of the most important things I'll mention before I pass the baton is that Humanities for All grants, both quick and project grants, support participatory learning opportunities. So this can be something that is happening with, in a museum, in a community-based organization, or also through partnerships between some of the organizations that are doing this work. So we'll take a look in just a moment at some examples of how project and quick grants are happening in communities across California. But in just a moment, we'll kind of walk through the key criteria. And so as I had said, participatory, that is a key element of Humanities for All programming models. So this can mean community conversations, forum, dialogues, community-wide reads and reading and discussion series, projects that involve some form of public humanities research, knowledge production, community-based learning, and how these ideas are going to be disseminated amongst community members. There's also a strong interpretive thread. And so by that, we mean exhibitions, whether permanent or traveling, digital or physical, with accompanying public programs that interpret, whether it's history, whether it's a person, whether it's an event, that they are essentially breaking down the bigger context or the bigger meaning behind some of these stories. Additionally, lectures, presentations, performances with related discursive activities, interpretive programming, again, really opportunities to frame a story, frame a history, frame a place, and provide deep context. And lastly, narrative. So this can include books, films, and cultural programming that seek to uncover the meaning behind these different texts. We're also looking at oral history projects, story collection, story sharing, and other narrative-based activities. So collecting stories, understanding the context of these stories, and also interpreting and analyzing them. Okay, and so as I mentioned, there are two strands that we'll dig into further. There's Quick Grants, which is the grant program that I manage. This is a 1-year project duration, so that means that grantees in this program will develop, implement, and evaluate their project over the course of 12 months. There are $1,000 to $5,000 available in grant funding. There is no match required. Typically, we offer 3 grant rounds per year, and it's about a 2-month review process. The next deadline is February 15th, 2024.
Okay, so hi again, everybody. I'm Felicia Kelly, and I manage the project grant arm of Humanities for All. So these are a little different from quick grants in that the duration of the project can be up to 2 years. It's a 2-year maximum grant period. Awards range from 10,000 to 25,000. We do require cost sharing on this. 1-to-1 minimum match is required. So as Brett said, if you request $25,000 grant, your total budget would need to be at least 50,000. We have 2 grant rounds per year. We just had a deadline yesterday. We'll be announcing the awards for that in May. It's about a 4-month review process. The next deadline, if you want to apply, will be in July, and that will be for project activities taking place anytime within the window of December 2024 up to November 2026. So again, it's a 2-year grant period. Okay, now we're going to show you a couple of examples of each project grants and quick grants. So as Lucena said, there's just an incredible variety of types and modalities of programming that our hundreds of grantees to date have employed. I think with project grants, we are now up to over 150 grants that we've made through this program. And we do encourage you to take a look at the lists, the descriptions of previously funded projects, because that will really give you a good sense of the landscape, the funding landscape for each of these grant programs. So we can't talk about all of them today, but just to share one recent project that's really, I think, a standout for among project grants is a project that actually took place this fall. It was called Circa, a Queer History Festival, and it was sponsored, or the applicant recipient organization was the One Archives Foundation here in Los Angeles, where I'm based. And this was a really interesting project. All of the activities took place within a very compressed period of 1 month, October of this past year. And it was all built around celebrating LGBTQ History Month, which is in October. And what this project did was to really in addition to engaging folks at the archive who have probably the largest collection of LGBTQ related material in the country, they worked with over 30 community partner organizations to put on over 50 events within a 1-month period. And these range the entire gamut of public humanities programming. So some of the partners did exhibits, others did film screenings and discussions, others hosted community conversations, others hosted performances and presentations, followed by Q&A or discussion periods. But it was all aimed at opening up the history, LGBTQ history, and just showcasing the diversity and variety of folks in that community and exploring issues of past, present, and future concern to this community, to that really engage folks in the community as well as other people, right? So very, very expansive, inclusive, wide-ranging set of programs. Okay, back to you, Lucena.
Thanks. And I'll just quickly share a project that I think reflects how quick grants and project grants can be very localized to a place. And so this project was called the Queer and Trans Oral History Project, and it was presented out of the high desert, specifically 29 Palms. And so this was a project headed by the project director, T. Hamidi, who's the person holding the other half of the rainbow with the hat in the top right-hand corner. And they created a few different public events where folks in the 29 Palms area who are attending different community festivals could record their stories. And it was a pretty cool project because if you take a look at the image at the bottom right-hand side, there's actually this old phone booth that was outfitted with a telephone that had a recording device in it. And so you could go into this phone booth, tell your story. There were some prompts. And so some of the prompts were really focusing on how do LGBTQ plus folks in the high desert, how do they find their way there? How do they survive? How do they thrive? How do they make community? How do they find allies? How do they build support? And so folks would record their story, and then there, over the course of the 12-month grant period, there were events to share the stories, to talk, to have fun events like drag queen bingo as featured in this slide. And also to share these oral histories with youth, to create a zine and videos, and really just kind of do what I think we mentioned, which is knowledge production, right? Take these oral histories and create all of these great ways, all these great outputs, so that folks from different age groups and different backgrounds could access them and learn about the experiences of the people who, who very generously participated in the story collection project. So just a couple examples. I will pass the baton to my colleagues to talk more about, looks like questions. Looks like we're on a question break.
Thanks for that recap, Luciana and Felicia. Yeah, let's take a look and see if there are any questions about HFA. Someone is asking about matching funds. Maybe Luciana, could you elaborate on how a match could be made through these grants? I know Quick Grant doesn't require that.
Yeah, so quick grants do not require a matching fund, but essentially you would, if you were to pursue like a project grant, you would need to demonstrate in your budget that you had access to either cold hard cash, you had those funds, or if you had matching, matching in the form of in kind. So whether donations, services, venues, folks' labor, you could calculate that and determine that, in fact, it actually, is equivalent to what you were requesting in the form of a grant. I know that other grants pursued, as long as they're non-federal grants, can also be leveraged in that way. I'm not sure if there's anything I'm missing. I know Felicia or John could probably jump in with that one as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I would add, don't be intimidated by the match requirement. Our grantees seem to always be able to meet their match, usually through their own donated time and labor, as Luciana mentioned. Let us know if you're having some trouble thinking about matching funds. They also don't have to be in place at the time of application. Just a good estimate in your budget will show us that you're prepared to plan for a match. Doesn't have to be secured until your final report. Okay, another question here, Luciana, since you're on camera, maybe you could tackle it. They're asking if we applied for a grant and didn't receive it through HFA and we want to reapply to the program, should we be modifying our earlier application? Could you kind of give a few notes on how to resubmit an application?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have many folks who maybe don't get it one round and modify their proposal, and over time they do receive funding. One of the ways to ensure that you are modifying your proposal in the areas that it needs it is to actually request the reviewer commentary, which we do, our program officers do provide for folks who have previously applied. So if you applied to a round, usually if you receive that declination notice, there's a little message that says, hey, if you're interested in funding, reach out to your program officer. And we are more than happy to offer those comments that have been recorded by the reviewers. And often, it could be certain things like, hey, this section describing the focus of your project is a little ambiguous, maybe clarify it a little bit. Your budget may need a little bit more itemization, details. Often it's, sometimes there's key details that reviewers just need tweaked a bit to help kind of really provide the clear snapshot of your project, of your project's goals, and you know, the big sort of aims that you're attempting, you know, that you're hoping to achieve. So I'll open it up to my colleagues because I know that they also have probably a lot of experience in providing reviewer comments.
Thanks, Susanna. Yeah, would any other program officers like to speak to the reapplication process? Okay.
I
We
think you
can-
covered it, Lucina. Yeah, we
Okay.
really strongly encourage you to request those comments. People generally say that it's very helpful to them in reapplying to us and possibly other funders as well.
Awesome. Okay, well, I see that we're almost halfway through the webinar, so I think we'll keep moving for now, and then we'll have another question break shortly. So please keep submitting your questions. They've been really good ones. Thanks. Okay, John.
Thanks, Kirsten, and hi, everybody. Again, I'm John Lightfoot, Director of Media and Journals and Programs, and I'm going to talk about the California Documentary Project Grant Program. This is the 20th anniversary of the introduction of the California Documentary Project, and to date, some really extraordinary projects that have really done, I think, astounding things in the world have been supported through California Humanities, and I'll talk a little bit about the strategy, intent, and contours of that program on the next slide, please. So the California Documentary Project is, as I say, one of our longer standing grant programs that supports film, audio, and digital media projects, which can be, you know, web-based or interactive media, that document California subjects and issues, use the humanities to provide context, depth, and perspective, and have the potential to reach and engage broad and diverse audiences, both throughout the state of California, but nationally and potentially even beyond. And as you'll see in the list here, through multiple means. We're very supportive of projects that have sort of a multifaceted take and can reach different audiences through both, you know, what you'd expect maybe, whether it's broadcast or film festivals, but also have a really community-based and grassroots-based aspects of their distribution plans as well. We really want them to reach audiences that would not normally get access to this material. We are open to all formats, so pretty much all formats. So again, it can be a short film, a series of short films, a web-based series, broadcast length, podcasts, etc. And we're open to pretty much all subject matter as well. So it's not so much what the subject is, but to some degree how you're treating that. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But so we currently have two categories available through the CDP grant program: research and development and production. And as you'll see the details there, R&D are grants up to $15,000. Like the project grants, they require a one-to-one match. And also 2 humanities advisors to be involved in helping inform the approach to the project. And we can talk more about how humanities advisors work, but they're there to be your allies and your resources to help you contextualize and further understand the story you're telling, the subject you're covering. Production grants are up to $50,000, similar match required. And the thing to note about these is that by design, these are intended to be early funding, right? Particularly research and development, that's obvious. But the production too, for us, kind of the sweet spot are when projects are still developing content. And the rationale behind that is that this is when our funding have the most sort of catalytic effect. It will help you working with humanities advisors to shape the approach. And so our funds can go to post-production, but not exclusively. A project still has to be in what would typically be considered the production stage to be eligible. A couple of things just to mention about the early funding. It does mean that we place quite a bit of emphasis on the written proposal. We want to have as level a playing field as possible. So the work sample that's submitted is important, but it's not the most important thing. So if a project's already extremely well resourced and raised a ton of money and has a really slick, flashy trailer, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a step above or more competitive than a project that's got a really good idea, really good humanities content, and it's the right team to make it. The other thing I just want to say before going to the next slide, Kirsten, is that you know, it's important to note that we as an organization, California Humanities, has been supporting media pretty much since we were founded in the 1970s, almost 50 years. And it's seen as a way to basically disseminate and distribute humanities content far and wide throughout the state and nationally. It is extremely important to note, though, that we are, as mentioned earlier by Lucena, a public humanities organization, not a media organization. So our first and foremost concern is on the story you're telling and the knowledge and information that people will get from that story. Having a creatively made, high quality, technical quality production is extremely important as well. But for us, first and foremost, it's the knowledge and meaning building that come from the stories you're telling. And with that, as Felicia mentioned, it is always a good idea to look at what a funder has supported previously to get a sense of the sort of things that resonate with our reviewers. Because I do want to emphasize that while this is a California Humanities Grant Program, we involve outside reviewers in all stages of the review process. So we're getting as diverse, broader range of perspectives as possible to bear on the projects we support. So what I would like to do is just talk about 4 projects that are, just kind of give little snapshots, little highlight snapshots of projects that have been funded fairly recently and are all still in production, just to give a sense of the range of the subject matter. So the first one, working clockwise from the upper left, is a project called Good Fire. And this is a documentary film that follows 3 generations of Yurok women and their use of indigenous fire practices. And we funded this right at the time when California was experiencing so many wildfires, and this was giving us another insight and perspective on management of these natural disasters from a specific cultural perspective. To the right of Good Fire is a film called Canada Lee, Native Son, and this is the first feature documentary to be done about the life and legacy of African-American actor Canada Lee, and this is a sort of biographical profile. Beneath that is a project called New Wave, which is a film that looks at how popular music and popular culture shaped and influenced the identity and community among Vietnamese youth in Orange County in the 1980s. And it's going to be a great project. And to the left of that is a film called Sound and Cochrane, which is a documentary about the 1956 campaign in California's 29th district that resulted in the election of the first Asian American member of the US Congress. Another film that's in production, and they should be rolling out hopefully in the next year or so. So I hope that gives a good snapshot of the program. I'm open to any questions.
Yeah, John, the one question that's currently in the queue is, what if I need funds for post?
So, like I said, our funds can go to post-production, but they can't go exclusively to post-production. So you have to have, at a minimum, something in the budget that says this is about the generation of content as opposed to the final completion of the project.
That's great. Thank you, John, and apologies for the slippy fingers.
That's all right.
Okay, over advanced us a couple times.
Well done. Thanks, everyone.
Now we're going to move on to Library Innovation Lab, but if any questions about CDP come up, I know a lot of you are here for that program. Feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll have some time at the end. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. Okay, so Library Innovation Lab, and this is kind of a special program that is just for California public libraries, library support organizations, and library staff members to participate in. So may not be applicable to many of you, but I'll just quickly describe it. This is a program that we launched in 2017. It's now in its 8th year, and it provides a kind of professional development experience for a cohort of 10 programming librarians or library staff members every year in order to enable them to plan, research, implement, and assess the impact of a new public humanities project in their community, for their community, that will engage immigrants. And the focus is really on engaging immigrants in their community. So over the course of this year-long experience, the participating librarians or library staff members develop skills, gain confidence, make connections with folks in their communities and with colleagues, like-minded colleagues across the state. And we provide a grant of $5,500 to each participating library in order to furnish some venture capital for experimentation with innovative public humanities programming. So on the next slide, here's just a list of some of the amazing different types of projects that participants to date. There have been over 70 libraries that have participated to date, and we're now recruiting for our 2024 cohort. But again, libraries have employed many, many different types of public humanities programming modalities in their work. So again, as we saw with project grants and quick grants, everything from exhibits to film screenings to oral history projects to participatory arts and traditional craft type programs, bringing in artists, musicians, culture bearers, scholars, experts in many different aspects of California's diverse immigrant community traditions and heritage to explore these topics with community members, both immigrants and non-immigrants. So the deadline for this is coming up quickly, February 1st. If you're interested, check out the information on the webpage and listen to our recorded webinar where we go into much more detail about this program.
Great, thanks, Felicia. Hey, lastly, I'll talk about Civics and Humanities middle grades grants. This is a new pilot program entering its second year. This grant program supports civic education for California's middle grades aged youth. We define that as grades 6 to 8 or ages 10 to 14. The grants are designed to support education in school settings, public school, private school, charter school, but also out of school. Some of the grants we've awarded this year went to field trip programs, to state park exploration, to cultural groups who are doing heritage education for middle grade students. It's an open and flexible design, really hoping to meet students and teachers where they are. The funds for this program can support teachers' stipends, salaries, classroom supplies, transportation, buses, administration, stipends for students. We have two lines for this program. One is called the planning grant. This is for projects that are really in the research and development phase. Maybe you're still building your project team. Maybe you have a team, but it's time to do focus groups or research to get to a program design that you're ready to deliver in schools. These projects are 1 year in duration and can award up to $5,000 for planning activities. Simultaneously, at the February 1 deadline, we offer an implementation grant. These grants are for active programming and activities for students. They're a little longer, 18 months, and they can offer up to $15,000. So this is a once per year grant. This will be the second year we're offering the program. It is a pilot. And if you're interested, I really encourage you to get in touch with me. We'll be offering this until February 1st of 2024 at 5 p.m. There are some resources online, including a webinar from a couple months ago, guidelines and FAQs. But as my colleagues have said, the best way to understand the funding priorities for the program is often to look at what we funded before. So I'll just briefly highlight this project in San Diego. A group of teachers is planning to bring middle schoolers to San Diego's Chicano Park, which is a historic site of resistance, graffiti, and civil disobedience, particularly important to the Latinx community in San Diego and Mexican-American community. Students are exploring the murals that have been painted here and then creating their own responses through media projects, essays, journalism, and other artistic expressions. For implementation projects, we also have an East Bay project called Amplifying Sanctuary Voices that looks at the phenomenon of climate migration within the U.S. and how the U.S. Will face its climate challenges as part of an international scale. Really interesting project, both going on this year, and we're looking forward to supporting another crop of civics and humanities grantees in 2024. Let me see if there are any questions. Let's see. I'm seeing someone wanting to clarify that Library Innovation Lab will fund up to 10 librarians in a cohort. Yes, exactly. Every year so far, we've funded 10 librarians from across the state of California. And the cohort gets together many times throughout the year in a supportive environment led by mentors who are themselves public librarians. Okay. Over to you, Brett.
Alrighty, so the big question, how do I apply? The little bar at the very tippy top of this slide, that's the very top ribbon on our webpage, calhum.org. So you can see the link that's circled there to get into our grant portal. If you have applied with us before, use the same username and password that you've used in the past. If you have not, there's a little register button in the upper right-hand corner. Depending on what grant program you're applying for, some of these may change slightly, but basically these are the items that are always going to be required. There's an application form, an online form, fill in the blank, drop down boxes, name, address, phone number, tax ID, stuff like that. Also a proposal narrative. Typically this is something that you craft in a Word doc. Depending on the program, it might be 2 pages, it might be 8 pages. And the specific grant guidelines will detail specifically what items you should be including in your proposal narrative. You'll also be asked to provide a budget. In this budget, the key things are, we want to see your whole project budget, and then also specifically, let's say you're asking for $20,000, we want to see how California Humanities $20,000 will be spent. So we'll ask you to outline a budget. You'll need to use a very specific template. You cannot use your own Excel doc or Word doc or anything. You have to use our specific budget template and include a little paragraph narrative that goes into some details. And then at the end of the application, you will be asked to have it certified by your authorizing official. Again, that's an executive director or a grants manager, a development director, someone at your organization who can verify that the information that you've submitted is true. We also ask for work samples, support materials. Sometimes we ask for a timeline of activities. And if you are using a fiscal sponsor, we will ask for your fiscal sponsorship agreement or a memo of understanding that you have with that organization. So we obviously offer support, just like the webinar today. We offer support for applicants. We do these live webinars that, like today, goes over all of our grant programs. We have very specific ones. They go over each individual grant program when those applications go live. You can access FAQs and sample proposals that have been funded on our webpage. We give you one-on-one support, our program officer team. You can give them a call, you can send them an email. And then we have some YouTube banks of tools of the trade that can help you think about what things you might need to conduct a successful humanities program. So a couple of things. I have 2 slides here. Advice are for applicants. So make sure that your project is a good fit. So whether you're applying for the project grant or the quick grant, for instance, depending on the scale of your activities, how long your activities will take, one might be a better fit than the other. Make sure that you do read the information that we provide you, especially the application guidelines that we publish for every single grant line. That will answer a lot of the questions that you have. and make sure that you're using the appropriate formatting and appropriate templates that we provide you in the application process. Make sure, have someone proofread your application, your narrative, have someone look at it, have someone double check your budget, have someone else read it to make sure read it for clarity and for cohesiveness. Don't wait until the last minute, please, because you will be bound to have something wrong, and something technical happens that you don't know how to solve. I had people yesterday needing to fill out a budget form in Excel, and they've never used Excel before. So make sure that you start early and submit all your materials early so you don't run into those 11th hour mistakes or roadblocks that might prohibit you from getting your application in on time. So next is advice for organizations. I would say and this is not just for California Humanities, this is for, when you are thinking about applying to any grant maker, whether it's in the California or across the nation. This is just general stuff that your organization can do. Make sure your basic information is easily verified. Make sure that your address, your phone number, even your tax ID is listed on your website. Many people think that they don't want to put their tax ID, their EIN number on their website, but you know what? Those are public knowledge anyway. It's not like you're hiding that piece of information. It's completely public knowledge. As a nonprofit's EIN, you can find that on GuideStar, on Charity Navigator, on any of those sites that are dedicated to nonprofits. Speaking of those sites, make sure your organization's profile on those sites like Candid's GuideStar or Charity Navigators is up to date. Nonprofits like us, grant managers like me, that's our Bible. We go there and we verify all that information. If we need more information on who your CEO is or who your board president is, or if we need a number from your latest 990, those are the resources that we go to. So if you may not be the right person to update those sites or to update those profiles, but talk to your CFO or your CEO, your accountant, your grants manager, whoever might have that information to make sure those sites are up to date for your organization. All right, review process. So anytime you submit an application, the guidelines document will clearly outline what things we'll be looking for. For instance, quality, capacity. We use a multi-stage review. We use field practitioners in the humanities realm, in the arts realm, in the culture realm, museums. We use our own board members, our own staff members to review applications. The degree of competitiveness varies by program, and of course the volume of applications varies by program as well. Overall, we average about a 15% funding rate. The notification and awards, again, all vary by program. You can kind of get a sense of that on our grants at a glance page on our website. Some review periods take 2 months, some take 4. It just depends. Our announcements, whether you receive an award notice or whether you receive a declination, are always sent by email from me. If your application is declined, you will always have the ability to ask for reviewer feedback, where your program officer will email you comments that they made, that the reviewer made, how to make your application stronger, or maybe even have a phone call with you to talk through your project or your proposal. As we did mention earlier, a revised application is very welcome. So just because you applied with a specific project in the past and it was declined, doesn't mean that you can't apply to that, apply for that same project again. Revise those proposals, make them stronger. and we're glad to review that information.
So I think
Yes.
I'm just going to piggyback off of what Brett said, and we only have a few minutes. But one of the questions that comes up a lot is what makes applications stand out? And here's just a couple things that we see very frequently. Does your budget make sense? Is it reasonable? Are you asking for costs that are associated with the development of a public humanities project? Or in the case of CDP that are related to your film production? Does your team have necessary experience to undertake the type of work that you're describing in your proposal? Is there a fair, a very wide base of support in your community that is backing up your project, whether it's partners or community members or other organizations? I think this one is probably crucial to all of the projects all of the grant programs we've been talking about. But does your project have a very clear description of how the humanities are central? I think that is something that comes up all the time, at least in the quick grant world, and I'm sure with others, where does the humanities live in your project, and how is it informing the type of work that's being undertaken? Similarly, as we talked about the public humanities, the description of how your project is audience-centered and publicly accessible is also, again, crucial. I would highlight that one and put a big star next to that. How does your project respond to community needs, interests, concerns, circumstances? Your project is ambitious, you're trying to do exciting and cool things that are of interest to your community, but also realistic, that you are aware of what can realistically be achieved in the duration of your grant period. And last but not least, for CDP, that your project has the potential to reach and engage both statewide and national audiences. So there's many, many more things that I'm sure if you wanted to talk with the program officer, we would be happy to talk with you about this. And Brett, is this your
Yep,
slide?
yep.
All right.
Yeah, so what happens if you are awarded? You'll be asked to sign a grant agreement, you as the project director, as well as your organization. You'll be asked to attend an orientation session where you get to know all these things much, much more in detail as far as what is required from you. While you execute your program, you're going to make sure that the California Humanities and the National Endowment are properly acknowledged on any marketing material, any presentation, any audio. You'll keep us informed about your activities. You'll monitor your progress so that you can accurately report out if in some grants interim reports are needed. In all grants, final reports are needed. You'll need to secure your match. You'll need to track your budget. And then you will submit a final report that outlines and demonstrates how wonderful your project was. So here's all our social media links. Follow us, keep in touch with us. One thing that I do want to point out, because this is kind of a wide audience here, one thing we have experienced over the years is so many people have continued to call us Cal Humanities. We don't want to be called Cal Humanities anymore. Our legal name is California Humanities, and that is how we wish to be addressed and recognized. I know change is hard, but we really haven't used Cal Humanities since about 2015. So embrace that. We look forward to hearing from you, whether it's in applications. If you have further emails, email us if you have further questions. And if there's any last minute questions, feel free to pop them in the box.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for joining us. Thanks for sticking around till the end. Thank you to my colleagues for their presentations. And we hope to hear from you. Please don't be shy. Reach out to us. We're always happy to talk. And Beth has put a link in the chat to sign up for our monthly e-news. This is the #1 way to stay in touch with our funding ops. So if you're not on the list, please do sign up. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.